A company's balance sheet, it's not just a boring list of numbers. It's actually a story about their strategy. And today, we're going to build the blueprint to decode that story. We'll turn all that raw financial data into something crystal clear, and we'll do it all inside Excel. All right, let's just jump right in with a question. Say a company's cash goes up by 2 million bucks. First thought? That's awesome, right? I mean, more cash is always good. But what if that simple happy number is actually hiding something? Well, something complicated, maybe even something bad. And that really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. It's this idea that in finance, raw numbers can totally lie to you. See, our whole job as analysts, the entire point is to find the context that makes those numbers mean something. Okay, so let's dig into why. Why can't we trust these numbers by themselves? Why is a $2 million jump in cash kind of meaningless on its own? Think of that $2 million as a ghost. It's just floating there, totally meaningless, until we anchor it down. And we do that by asking two super important questions. First, what's the trend? How does this year's growth look compared to last year's? And second, what's the proportion? How big is that 2 million compared to everything else the company has? If you don't have those two things, you're basically just flying blind.
The good news is, analysts have two powerful tools, two lenses that bring everything into focus and give us that context we're looking for. Let's check them out.
All right, this right here is super important. On one side, we've got horizontal analysis. Just think of the word horizon. You're looking across time. You're comparing this year to last year, asking, hey, what's the trend? Then on the other side, you've got vertical analysis. For this one, think of looking up and down a building. You're taking one snapshot in time and asking, okay, what's the proportion? How big is each piece of the pie? So one is all about momentum and the other is all about structure. Okay, theory's great, but let's get our hands dirty. We're going to actually build a pro-level analysis model right here in Excel. I'll walk you through it step by step. First up, a clean setup is absolutely key. So in column A, just list out your accounts, cash, inventory, all that stuff. Then across the top, lay out your years from oldest to newest. And listen up, here is a pro tip that will literally save you hours down the road. Select all your data and just hit Control-T. That simple shortcut turns it into an official Excel table. Why does that matter? Because now your formulas will automatically fill down when you add new data. Seriously, it's a total game changer. So let's start with our first tool, horizontal analysis. Remember, this one is all about spotting the trends over time. We're looking for the direction and the speed of change. Are things speeding up, slowing down, going in reverse? This is how we figure that out. The formula itself is just basic math, right? It's just new minus old over old. But here's a classic problem. What if the old value was 0? Maybe the company didn't even have that thing last year. Well, you'll get a big, ugly error in your spreadsheet. So here's how the pros handle it. We wrap the whole formula in something called if ever. It basically tells Excel, look, try doing the math, but if you get an error, don't freak out, just put a 0 there instead. It's a simple trick that makes your work look super clean and professional. Now, what if you're looking at a longer period, like 5-10 years? Just looking at the year-over-year change can get kind of messy. The numbers can jump all over the place. A much cleaner way to do it is called indexing. All you do is you take your first year and call it 100. Then every year after that is just shown as a percentage of that starting point. It just smooths everything out and makes those long-term trends pop. Okay, so we've got our trend analysis down. Now let's grab our second tool, vertical analysis, to understand the company's structure. This is how we create what's called a common size statement. And it's so powerful because it turns every number into a percentage of the total. That means you can compare the financial DNA of a tiny little startup to a huge corporation on a true apples-to-apples basis. It's awesome. And the formula for this is dead simple. You just take the line item, like cash, and divide it by total assets. But here's the most important Excel trick you need to know for this: the dollar signs. When you put dollar signs around a cell reference, like $B, $20, you're locking it in place. You're telling Excel, hey, when I drag this formula down, I want you to always divide by that specific cell with the total in it. This is called an absolute reference, and you absolutely have to know it to build models quickly. All right, we've set up the spreadsheet, we've got our formulas working. Now for the best part, the payoff, the so what. What does any of this actually mean? This is the moment we stop being number crunchers and become storytellers, finding the real strategy hidden in the data.
So this is what your model gives you, a table full of numbers. You've got your raw data, your year-over-year growth, your percentages of the total, and yeah, you can see some stuff like, wow, inventory is up 28%, and whoa, intangibles shot up by 400%. But let's be honest, just staring at a grid of numbers is kind of boring, right? It doesn't exactly scream insight.
So let's fix that, because this is where the fun starts. Instead of just showing a wall of numbers, we can use Excel's own built-in tools to make the story jump out at you. Things like data bars, which show you the size of each number visually, or spark lines, which are like tiny little charts inside a single cell. The whole point is to make the important stuff impossible to miss. Okay, so what's the first story our data is telling us? Well, our horizontal analysis shows inventory is climbing fast. But what happens when we pull in another piece of data, like sales growth? Suddenly we spot a problem. When you see inventory growing way faster than sales, that's a classic red flag. It could mean they're making too much stuff, or maybe people just aren't buying it like they used to. And look at this. This chart just puts it in neon lights. You've got inventory growth exploding at 28%, while sales are barely moving at 2%. That huge gap tells a story all by itself. It makes the problem so obvious, you just can't miss it. All right, let's find story number 2. Look at the line for intangible assets. It went through the roof. So what does that mean? Well, intangibles can be a lot of things, but one of the biggest is something called goodwill. And goodwill pretty much only shows up on the books when a company buys another company. So when you see a massive spike like this, it's a huge clue that this company is growing by buying up other businesses. That's their strategy. And once again, a simple visual makes it so clear. Our vertical analysis, the one that looks at proportions, shows that intangibles went from being this tiny 5% sliver of the company's pie to a huge 25% chunk. That's not a small change, that's a massive strategic shift in how this company operates. And really, this is why we do all this. This is the whole point. We're not just spitting out numbers. We're using these two techniques, horizontal and vertical, to figure out the how. How is the company spending its money? How is their big picture strategy actually showing up in the real world, on the balance sheet? And hey, if you want to take this to a whole other level, here's a little bonus tip. There's a tool inside Excel called Power Query. You can use it to connect your analysis file directly to a source database or file. What that means is, when next year's numbers come out, you don't have to rebuild anything. You just hit one button, refresh, and your entire analysis updates automatically. It is ridiculously powerful. So there you have it. We went from one simple, kind of misleading number all the way to a full story about company strategy. You now have the blueprint, so the next time you open up a financial statement, you're not going to see a boring page of numbers. You're going to see a story, just waiting for you to find it. The only question left is, what story are you going to uncover?